Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're cracking open a topic that might seem pretty basic at first glance. But trust me, there's a whole lot more to eggs than meets the eye. We're
Mm,
going way beyond like just, your basic scrambled eggs or omelets.
right.
We're really going to get into it today. And believe it or not, our main source is the Wikipedia entry on eggs as food. You wouldn't believe how much info is packed in there.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is fascinating how such a staple food like eggs can have this, well, incredibly rich history and cultural significance all over the world, too.
Oh, absolutely. So let's dive into that history to start. Did you know that humans have been eating eggs for like millions of years? I mean, think about it. They were a key part of our ancestors' diets way before we even had agriculture.
It's true. And what's really interesting to me is that chickens, well, they were domesticated for their eggs around 7,500 BCE, which predates raising them for meat.
Wow,
It really shows how important eggs were even way back then.
that is a great point. I was reading about, well, the ancient Egyptians and how they would put ostrich and pelican eggs in tunes as offerings.
Oh, wow.
Imagine like, getting a pelican egg as a gift.
Dude, that's a big egg.
Right.
But, those offerings, those weren't just like random food items. They were very symbolic, representing life and rebirth.
Yeah.
They were meant to, well, they were meant to sustain the deceased in the afterlife. I think it's really interesting how food can be so much more than just, fuel for our bodies. It can have deep spiritual meaning.
Yeah. Food for thought, literally. So, okay, let's fast forward a bit to the ancient Romans. They apparently started their meals with eggs and then crushed the shells afterward.
Yeah, and crushing those shells, that wasn't just for fun. There's actually a superstition that evil spirits could be hiding inside.
Oh, really?
So it was like a way to ward them off. It reminds me of how food and superstition have always been intertwined.
It's true.
Even today, I mean, we still have rituals like making a wish before blowing out birthday candles, right?
Very true. Okay, then there's the whole practice of fasting from eggs during Lent in like the medieval period.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, there was a religious reason, but it also makes you wonder if they sort of maybe unintentionally knew something about sustainable farming practices.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily conscious sustainability, but it definitely had that effect. Giving the hens a break from laying during Lent, it helped to conserve food stores at a time when resources were, well, they were pretty scarce. It's interesting how sometimes limiting consumption can actually benefit everybody, even the animals.
That's a good point. So we've been talking a lot about chicken eggs, but there are so many other types of eggs out there.
Oh, yeah.
Duck eggs, goose eggs, quail eggs, you name it. It's a whole world beyond just your typical supermarket aisle.
Absolutely. So while chicken eggs are definitely the most common, I mean, globally, there's this huge variety of eggs that people eat. For example, duck and goose eggs are popular in a lot of different cuisines. And quail eggs, which are super tiny, are considered a gourmet ingredient.
Yeah, they're so cute. I remember trying quail eggs once,
Yeah,
like bite-sized.
I think they're adorable. But besides just being, novel, what do you think makes these different types of eggs appealing?
I think it's not just about the taste, right?
Yeah.
It's the texture, the presentation. Like quail eggs, I've seen them used in dishes to add a touch of elegance because they're so small.
Oh, yeah,
It elevates the whole experience.
totally. And then you have things like guinea fowl eggs, which are popular in some African markets. It just goes to show you that, well, that food is so tied to culture and tradition.
Absolutely. Different cultures have their own, unique ways of preparing eggs, enjoying eggs,
Right.
based on what's available to them and what's been passed down through generations.
Mm. It's really cool. Have you ever tried any of those less common types of eggs?
Um, I've had duck eggs a few times. They're much richer,
Yeah.
almost creamier than chicken eggs. I'm kind of curious about those guinea fowl eggs.
Well, maybe that's our next culinary adventure. But speaking of adventure, have you ever thought about the sheer scale of global egg production?
It's mind-boggling. Like the numbers, they're seriously staggering. In 2017 alone, global production of chicken eggs reached over 80 million tons.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't even know, the weight of a small mountain range, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. It really highlights just how much we rely on eggs as a global food source. And remember, that's just chicken eggs. Add in all the other types of eggs, and wow, those numbers are just astronomical.
I read about this egg factory in British Columbia, just one factory, It ships out 12 million eggs a week.
That's incredible.
12 million. Imagine the logistics of getting all those eggs from the hens to our plates.
It really speaks to the efficiency of modern food production, but it also raises some important
Oh,
questions
definitely.
about the environmental impact and the welfare of the hens, of course. That's something we'll definitely dig into later.
For sure. But for now, let's crack open an egg, figuratively speaking,
Okay.
and explore its anatomy. I mean, most people think of an egg as, a simple thing, but it's actually pretty fascinating.
It is. It's like this perfectly engineered package.
Yeah.
You've got the shell, the white, the yolk, the air cell, even those little chalazi, the things that hold the yolk in place.
Hello, say.
Yeah, they're like, well, they look like little white strings. They anchor the yolk so it stays centered and doesn't bump against the shell.
Oh, I always thought those were just like imperfections or something.
Nope, they have a very important job.
Okay. What about those labels we see on egg cartons?
Yeah.
Grade AA, A and B.
Oh, yeah. Those grades, they tell you about the quality of the egg, mainly based on the size of the air cell, which gets bigger as the egg ages. So, grade AA eggs, those have the smallest air cells, meaning they're the freshest. Fresher eggs have a firmer white and a higher yolk, perfect for frying or poaching. Lower grades, like A or B, those might have thinner whites and a flatter yolk. They're still perfectly good for things like baking or scrambling.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, let's talk shell color. I feel like some people swear by brown eggs, thinking they're healthier or more natural. Is there any truth to that?
Not really. It's mostly just perception and marketing.
Uh-huh.
Nutritionally, brown eggs and white eggs are pretty much identical.
Hmm.
The color really just comes down to the breed of chicken. So breeds with white earlobes, they tend to lay white eggs, and those with red earlobes lay brown eggs. There's no real nutritional difference between the two.
So it's not like brown cows giving chocolate milk.
Haha, no, not quite.
Okay, good to know. What about the yolk, though? Everyone loves a bright orange yolk. What makes the color vary so much? You see some that are pale yellow and others that are almost orange.
You got it. The hen's diet plays a huge role. If a hen eats feed that's rich in pigments called xanthophylls, which are found in things like marigolds and alfalfa, then the yolk will be a more vibrant orange color. If their diet doesn't have those pigments, well, then the yolk will be paler.
So those gorgeous golden yolks you see at like the farmer's market, those are a sign the hens are eating a more natural diet.
Exactly. It's like a little peek into their lifestyle.
Cool. So have you ever heard of double yolks or even yolkless eggs?
Oh, yeah. Double yolks happen when a hen releases two yolks at the same time, or sometimes they get, joined together during the egg formation process. It's more common with younger hens who haven't quite figured out their rhythm yet.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then you have the opposite, which is a yolkless egg, basically just egg white. Nature likes to throw in a few surprises now and then.
That is wild. What about those double-shelled eggs I've seen sometimes? Are those related to the double yolks?
Not necessarily. Double-shelled eggs happen when there's a little glitch in the hen's reproductive system. It's like an egg gets, backed up and another layer of shell forms around it. It's pretty rare, though.
Wow. I learn something new every day. Well, we've explored the outside of the egg, the inside of the egg, and the history of the egg.
Uh-huh. What's next?
I think it's time we move on to everyone's favorite part, cooking.
All right, let's get cooking. Eggs are just so versatile in the kitchen. You can scramble them, fry them, poach them, bake them, whip them into meringues. I mean, the possibilities are pretty much endless.
It's true.
But have you ever, actually thought about the science behind cooking an egg?
Okay, confession time. I usually just crack them open and hope for the best.
Uh-huh.
But I'm all ears for a little, culinary science lesson.
Well, okay, so it all comes down to the proteins in the egg white and the yolk. They both have proteins that solidify or cook at different temperatures. So the yolk actually solidifies at a lower temperature than the white, which is how you can get that perfect runny yolk with a nice firm white when you fry an egg.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's all about timing and temperature control.
So that's the secret. What about food safety, though? Especially when it comes to, salmonella.
That's a good point. Salmonella bacteria can be present in eggs, but the good news is they're easily killed by heat.
Oh.
So cooking those eggs thoroughly, that gets rid of any potential bacteria, making them safe to eat.
For those who like their eggs a little, less cooked or who are maybe more worried about getting sick, there's always pasteurized eggs.
Right. Pasteurization uses a gentle heat treatment that kills bacteria without actually cooking the egg. So they're still great for recipes that call for raw or lightly cooked eggs.
Okay, so a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever overcooked a hard-boiled egg and gotten that greenish ring around the yolk.
Oh, I think we've all been there at some point. But don't worry, that green ring, it's totally harmless. It's just a chemical change that happens when the iron in the yolk reacts with sulfur in the white.
Okay.
When you cook it for too long,
So it's safe to eat?
totally safe. It might not look the prettiest, but it's fine.
Good to know. Any tips for avoiding the green ring in the future?
Yeah, here's a trick. Start your eggs in boiling water instead of cold, and try not to overcook them. It makes a big difference, both for the color and for how easy they are to peel.
Great tip. Another thing I've noticed is that the flavor of eggs can vary quite a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Is that just me, or does the hen's diet affect the taste?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like how the terroir, the environment where something is produced, affects the flavor of wine. Well, it's similar with eggs. The hen's diet can create all these subtle variations in taste.
So, farm fresh eggs, like from those hens you see roaming around eating all sorts of plants and bugs, will taste different from the eggs you get at the grocery store.
Exactly. So think about it. If a hen eats a lot of corn, for example, the yolks might have a slightly sweeter flavor.
Oh, interesting.
Or if they're eating fish meal, you might get a little hint of, well, fishiness in the egg.
Oh, I see.
Some people even say they can taste the difference between eggs from hens that are truly free range versus cage free.
What about duck eggs? I've heard those have a much richer, more intense flavor than chicken eggs.
That's true. It's a combination of factors like their diet, breed, and even their environment. Duck eggs tend to have larger yolks and a higher fat content, which contributes to that rich, almost buttery flavor.
Buttery. Now, if you want a truly adventurous egg experience, you got to try tea eggs.
Oh, yeah.
They're a popular street food in China and Taiwan.
Mhm.
Hard-boiled eggs that are simmered in this mixture of tea, soy sauce, and spices.
Sometimes even star anise or cinnamon.
It's like a savory, complex flavor.
Totally. And they're so beautiful, too. The simmering process creates these, marbled patterns on the eggs.
Oh, wow.
It's like a work of art you can eat.
I've seen pictures of those decorated Ukrainian Easter eggs called pisanki.
Oh, yeah. Those are incredible. They're so intricate.
Do they use a special kind of dye, or is it edible?
They're not really dyed, at least not in the usual way. They use this wax resist method. So melted beeswax is applied to the shell in these really intricate patterns, and then the egg is dipped in dye. The wax blocks the dye, leaving these beautiful designs.
Sounds very time-consuming.
Oh, definitely. They're more for decoration than for eating.
Okay, so we've talked about cooking eggs, but what about storing them? How long can they stay fresh, and what's the best way to store them?
Well, because of the risk of salmonella, storing eggs properly is super important.
Right.
Here in the U.S., commercially sold eggs are washed before they're packaged, which cleans the shell, but it also removes a protective layer called the cuticle.
So U.S. eggs are like naked, which is why we need to refrigerate them.
Exactly. Refrigeration helps prevent bacterial growth. But in a lot of European countries, they don't wash the eggs, so they can be stored at room temperature for quite a while without spoiling.
That's fascinating. Different practices, different rules.
Right. What if you want to keep eggs fresh for even longer, like months or even years?
Is that even possible?
Oh, totally. There are traditional preservation methods. One way is using salt. You've probably heard of salted duck eggs, a delicacy in Chinese cuisine.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
The yolk gets all firm and oily.
Exactly. They cure those eggs in brine for weeks. That draws out moisture and transforms the yolk.
Wow.
Then there's pickled eggs, a staple in lots of cultures.
Oh, yeah, pickled eggs.
Preserved in vinegar, salt, spices, and sometimes beetroot juice for that bright pink color.
It's true. Those are really pretty. It's amazing how preservation techniques not only extend the shelf life of food, but also create all these different flavors and textures.
Totally. And speaking of unique flavors, we can't forget about century eggs.
Century eggs. Those are the ones that look kind of, intimidating. The ones with the dark, translucent insides.
Those are the ones. They're a Chinese delicacy where they preserve duck, chicken, or quail eggs for weeks, sometimes even months, in this mixture of clay, ash, salt, and lime. The alkaline environment completely transforms the egg.
I've heard they have a very pungent aroma
They do.
and a strong flavor, almost cheesy.
It's a unique taste, that's for sure. Not for everyone, but it's a fascinating example of these ancient food preservation methods.
So we've gone from basic egg anatomy to global production, from cooking science to cultural traditions, even egg preservation. What's next?
Let's crack open the nutritional side of eggs and get into the whole debate about their place in our diets.
Okay, so let's get into the nutrition side of things.
Right.
We all know eggs are a good source of protein, but what else is in there? Like vitamins, minerals, that sort of thing.
Well, eggs are like these little nutritional powerhouses,
Mm.
packed with essential vitamins like vitamin A, riboflavin, B12, and D. And then you've got minerals like choline, phosphorus, zinc.
There's a lot.
Oh, and don't forget those antioxidants, lutein and zeaxanthin. Those are great for eye health.
I did see in the Wikipedia article, there's a whole table that breaks down like exactly how much of each nutrient is in 100 grams of egg.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
It really is. But does cooking an egg change the nutritional value at all?
That's a good question. Cooking actually makes some of the nutrients easier for our bodies to digest and absorb. Plus, we talked about the risk of salmonella.
Right.
Cooking eliminates that risk, so there are definitely some benefits to cooking your eggs.
So a well-cooked egg is both safer and more nutritious. Got it. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
cholesterol.
Hmm.
Eggs have this reputation for being high in cholesterol.
Right. And it is true that eggs contain cholesterol, mostly in the yolk, but more recent research suggests that the cholesterol we eat might not have as big of an impact on our blood cholesterol levels as we once thought. So now the focus has shifted more towards things like saturated fat and trans fat. Those are the real culprits when it comes to raising cholesterol.
And eggs aren't high in saturated fat, right?
Relatively low, yeah.
Okay. There's also been research on eggs and their potential link to type 2 diabetes.
Right.
What have scientists learned about that?
Well, the results have been a bit mixed, to be honest. Some studies suggest a possible link between eating a lot of eggs and an increased risk of type 2 diabetes.
Hmm.
But other studies haven't found that link. Some have even shown a slight decrease in risk. It's a complex issue, definitely needs more research to really understand it.
So still up for debate, it sounds like. What about eggs and heart health? I feel like that's another area where there's been back and forth over the years.
Yeah, it's been debated for sure. But the good news is that more recent studies have shown that moderate egg consumption, like up to 1 egg a day, is probably fine for heart health, at least in healthy people.
Okay.
But of course, everyone's different, so it's always best to talk to your doctor or a registered dietitian for personalized advice.
That's good advice. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like we've learned so much about eggs, from their ancient history and cultural significance to the science behind their structure, cooking, even preservation.
It's amazing how much there is to learn about something so seemingly simple, right?
It really is, and we've uncovered some surprising facts about their nutritional value as well.
Yeah, eggs really are fascinating little packages.
They are. Hopefully our listeners will now look at eggs in a whole new light.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on this, this excellent adventure.
Uh-huh. Anytime I can.